Our quick strike report today brings you one of the final phases of the tank battles of Arracourt. But first, I'd like to welcome our special guest, my daughter and the United States Air Force Academy cadet, Savannah Conley.
Hi, glad to be here. On September 22nd, 1944, under the cover of fog, the Germans launched their 111th Panzer Brigade in a counterattack against the United States 37th Tank Battalion east of Arracourt, hoping to deliver a knockout punch.
Will fog and daring be enough, or will our 111th Panzer Brigade meet the same grim fate as its historical counterpart?
The Germans reeled away from defeats in Normandy, but by September of 1944 had found time to reform. In a fateful coincidence, Hitler planned a major attack in Lorraine just as Allied supply emphasis shifted away in support of Operation Market Garden. The objective was to blunt the Allied drive into Germany by destroying Patton's Third Army. Lorraine in September of 1944 was wet and foggy, a factor important to the Germans who suffered under the wrath of Allied air power. Protected by the weather, and with their American foes slowing, the Germans found a legitimate opportunity. However, the U.S. forces were hardened veterans accustomed to victory and nearly at full strength. The Germans struggled to find transports, and troop quality was watered down by new recruits. The Panzer Brigades lacked cohesion, and some of their leadership lacked experience fighting the Americans. Mauled at Arracourt on September 19th and 20th, the Germans repositioned. On the 22nd, the 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades were thrown against the 37th Tank Battalion and the 10th Armored Infantry Battalion of the United States 4th Armored Division CCA near Juvisy and Lizay. Delayed for hours at the start, they raced to find success before the fog lifted and U.S. P47s began raining destruction down on them.
This is the battlefield for our scenario, 7 kilometers wide east to west and 5 kilometers deep, including the urban areas of Juvisy, Lizay, and Donelay. Little War's Tony helped design this tactical level engagement for Fistful of TOWS using 6mm miniatures from his and Little War's Ed's collections. As the Americans, Josh will command the 37th Tank Battalion as Tony leads the 10th Armored Infantry Battalion and the picket elements from the 25th Cavalry Squadron and 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion. Savannah will operate as a remote commander, issuing overall orders to her subordinates and making decisions and allocating the 405th Fighter Group once the fog lifts. The Germans have a tough task ahead of them. They will have to shake out their disorganized troops and make as much progress as possible before the fog lifts. They understand as players that they will likely lose. However, they can achieve a scenario victory by destroying more U.S. units and losing less German units than happened in 1944.
I mean, if the goal isn't to take this... Did he tell you the canal can only be crossed at like 2 bridges?
I heard that yesterday.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a nightmare to get across this thing.
Yeah, you don't need to get across to shoot them. You're going to have plenty of targets.
The German plan of attack is simple, which may be prudent given the low quality of their troops. Greg will take the vanguard, anchoring the German line in Juvisy, while Ed and Tom punch into the center and secure cover before the fog lifts. The 113th Panzer will arrive on the flank to surprise any American units who try to cross the canal at the bridge near Donelay. We're representing the literal fog on the tabletop with pillow batting. The players don't know exactly how long the fog will last, but our players are dealing with the fog of war in other ways. For the Germans, their units enter the table on blinds, and the players don't even know what their own markers represent. When a unit marker is revealed, we'll roll to see which platoon appears. I've done this to help represent the command confusion among the inexperienced jumbled German formations. It's a major wild card and a handicap for them.
Alright, so first things first. Air and artillery. I doubt we're getting any air right now.
No air. While the Americans are eager to make use of their air and artillery assets, the fog makes that impossible for now. But as Greg's vanguard stumbles forward toward Jubilees, the Germans soon encounter problems of their own.
All right, it is turn 2, and our plan has gone to pretty much immediately. The American pickets that are guarding this town are just way better quality than us. I explained to Tom and Ed, if they want me to take this town, we're gonna actually have to divert more to push through the American pickets, and the problem is time. You know, the fog is our friend, and we don't know when it's gonna lift.
The Germans hastily formulate a new plan of attack, switching their focus to Donelay where there are no American pickets to slow them down. The American players are unaware of the new German focus, but pickets deliver Savannah early reports of first contact. I allow Josh and Tony to send brief messages each turn, which I text her on my cell phone. Savannah is not taking a defensive approach. She orders a counterattack at the first opportunity, even with limited information. Josh's armored units creep through the fog toward the German flank, unsure of exactly what they will encounter. To avoid a traffic jam crossing the canal, Tony mobilizes his armored infantry to cross at both bridges. He knows he's racing German forces for Donelay, but what he doesn't know is that the 113th Panzer Brigade is about to arrive. The 113th arrived.
Oh, yeah! Get those boys in there.
Where did you place them at?
8, so a foot in from.
Yeah.
Although he cannot identify the exact formations through the fog, Tony issues an urgent report to his CO for guidance. Based on her limited report, Savannah orders Tony and Josh to counterattack from 2 directions towards Donelay. Here's where a remote commander not present at the tabletop really gets interesting, because what Savannah doesn't fully appreciate is the sheer size of the German force opposing her. The actual tabletop situation looks more like this. And the size of the formations becomes even more clear when, on turn 5, the fog finally lifts. All units on the table must now be revealed. The Germans roll to determine what their blinds represent, leading to some surprises for both sides. And suddenly, the battlefield is a lot more crowded. Josh and Tony can finally call artillery and airstrikes to disrupt the German attack. For Savannah, the challenge is trying to prioritize all the urgent requests for support. Tony is facing a dangerous situation at Donelay, but Josh sees an opportunity to cave in Greg's flank if only his CO will provide him the fire support. True to our offensive mentality, Savannah prioritizes Josh's attack outside Jubilee, hammering the German Jagdpanzer 470s and Panzer Grenadiers. Okay, we are attacking the Jagdpanzers.
Okay. So just stick it near there for now, just so we know what their target is. 1 to 2, it's a strafing attack. 4, 5, or 6, it's bombs.
4, 5, 6.
It's bomb work. AFBs in the open are suppressed automatically. On a 5+, they have to take a quality check. So roll a die for each of them.
Okay. Yeah, so the one next to the plane base
Yeah.
is 1.
Suppressed.
The one further from the plane base.
Big number.
Suppressed.
Ah, damn it.
Not very good.
The first P47 strike is effective, but not devastating. But the Americans can keep dialing in new strike missions every turn, and they need all the help they can get because the situation at Donelay continues to get worse. Tony's armored infantry are hit hard and driven back across the canal. The Germans are in full control of the town and now seeking to push across the canal to roll up the flank. With Ham and Ed massing an impressive combined arms force to attack the canal, the roar of P-47s echoes from above.
Here's how this works then. It's a flight of 4 aircraft, so as they roar in, machine gunning all those infantry in the open. Each infantry stand you attack with rate of fire 3.
So it's 3 dice per stand.
Right.
Did well though.
All right. First stand. Got a 4. 1 hit.
1 hit.
1 hit on the first stand.
First stand, 1 hit.
Second stand.
Hit.
1 hit. Third stand.
Hit.
1 hit.
Oh.
Fourth
Fourth
stand.
stand.
Every stand
2
is
hits.
his.
Last stand, 2 hits.
So 1 on each.
So minus
except
1
for
on the
last
last
one is
stand.
2.
He has failed 3 of them.
Yep.
Okay, so 3 of those stands will fail and go away.
3 out of 4 ain't
Burp.
bad.
A German infantry company is wiped off the board on this strike. If you want to learn more about the rules we're using for today's game, we reviewed Fistful of TOWS on our channel 2 years ago. This is a game where artillery and airstrikes don't often destroy units outright, but they are extremely effective at suppressing and dispersing them. Relentless American artillery fire pulverizes the ground around Donelay, forcing Tom to call off his attacks on the canal. Meanwhile, outside Jubilee, Josh finally breaks through Greg's position, leaving burning Panthers and half-tracks in the American wake. The Germans do stabilize a defensive line around Donelay, but they lack the firepower to sustain offensive operations. The German attack today is a failure, but not as costly as the historical one, where a shocking 80% of German armor was knocked out. Tom, Ed, and Greg have fared much better, but the Allies are still poised for victory in the West. I think any strategic German success of Arracourt in 1944 was almost impossible, but maybe you'd like to give it a try yourself. I've uploaded a PDF version of today's scenario to the free stuff section of LittleWarsTV.com. Go grab yourself a copy anytime and prove me wrong. That's the end of our quick strike report for the Battle of Arracourt, but I invite you to stick around for a little bonus discussion with my daughter Savannah about the challenges of remote command and limited communication in today's wargame.
So what'd you think about having a remote commander?
It did present some challenges. It affected where we were going to deploy airstrikes. There were some places on the battlefield that I'm like, here's where I want the plan. Oh, they're going over there. Although it's realistic in that those aircraft, for the most part, aren't at our beck and call. They're just roaming the airspace above the battle area looking for targets of opportunity. So taking that control away from us was actually a realistic move.
Yeah, the other issue too, I thought, was waiting for orders. You know, I knew what I wanted to do as a commander of my battalion, but I had to wait for the overall commander to actually start moving forward.
Yeah, that did present some problems because, as you said, I knew what I wanted to do, but I kind of had to wait for the whole thing to uncoil and get moving. So it wound up with some units strung out for a couple of kilometers down the edge of the canal there trying to get into the action.
But overall, I think we had a good commander. She made good decisions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Savannah, part of the reason that you're included in this game is that it ties into a project that you're doing for one of your classes. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for my history class this semester, we were tasked with analyzing a source from history in order to learn about history. And I decided to choose a war game because I thought that it would allow a unique perspective. It's important to analyze how air power, especially during World War II when it was still being formed, including with the Air Force coming soon after, how that impacted our nation's battles. And here it was used tactically to take off enemy forces from the field and neutralize those threats. And it was important because it also looked at some of the deficits of air power during that time, such as the fact that fog was such a detriment to how the planes were able to hit the targets on the ground.
Yeah, in a modern close air support aircraft, that would not be a consideration. Fog is not going to protect your columns. But yeah, in World War II, the technology didn't allow them to see through the fog. I know that you probably aren't particularly familiar with the P47, but the P47 had a really good reputation in World War II for close air support. The Germans knew what they were. They had a kind of a nickname for them, the Yabo, you know, because they called them like the Jaeger bombers because they were fighters and bombers.
A P-47 Thunderbolt fires in slow motion. Tremendous firepower, a mighty new weapon against the enemy.
Did you find them to be effective with what they were able to do on the tabletop?
I thought that they were pretty effective once the fog was lifted, of course.
Now, you as the remote commander, you weren't here at the table. You weren't able to see with your own eyes what was going on, and you had to rely on small messages and small images that you were sent, the images replicating people explaining where on a grid things were happening. How was that experience for you as a remote commander?
It definitely made it more difficult because it's important to have a good visualization of the battlefield in order to know when and where the events are taking place and your troops and armored battalions are stationed. So without that clear and concise image in my head, it would definitely make making some decisions harder because I couldn't visualize the field as well. So that definitely proved to be a struggle with being a remote commander. That probably would not have been as straightforward if I were actually at the table in person.
Now that we've completed the game and you've had a little bit of an opportunity to think about what we did, how did you feel, how did you feel personally about participating in it?
I definitely thought it was an enjoyable experience, especially since I got to put into action some of what I learned in my history class at the Air Force Academy. I thought it was very interesting to make decisions remotely because I know that that's a problem that we've touched on before, especially given the different communication skills and levels between different types of commanders. And I definitely thought that giving generalized orders helped me out because I know that the people I was giving the orders to were competent in their fields and be able to work with more general orders. So I think that proved effective, especially in keeping good relations with the people I was working with.
Okay, those are all valid points. It's interesting thinking about what some of the American players said. And then, yeah, there is that issue of general orders versus micromanaged orders. And you have to have more detail-oriented orders for people who don't know their jobs as well. And the general orders tend to work the best for people who already understand what their job is. And I think actually it's facilitated for you is because of the lack of experience with the game system, you didn't have to worry about the minutia of what to do, like measuring and rolling, and you just had to come up with the overall plan and then try to make sure that your subordinates stuck with that. So it was really nice having you here. It was really nice having you participate. I know that you are not currently geared towards a combat command at the academy. That's not what you're. Tell us a little bit about what you're currently studying. What are your majors?
Right now, I declared astronautical engineering and physics with a minor in German, and hopefully that'll be used to help develop or better current technologies in the Air Force when I graduate. I'm considering being an engineer, and that's where those skills will go to.
Well, thanks again. It's always a pleasure to have you. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thanks for having me.